Well, thank you guys for coming. How many of you have had Stranahans before or made some drinks with Stranahans? Cool. Okay, how many of you have never even heard of Stranahans? All right, cool. I'm going to change your opinions at least. For good or for better or worse, I'm not sure. But welcome to our home. This is where we make all our whiskey. Every Stranahan's bottle that you've ever seen or used, it's all come out of this location. So what we're drinking first, I'll kind of tell you what you're drinking now, and then we'll kind of get into the tour. But what you're drinking right now is our Blue Peak. Okay, this is our cocktail whiskey. This is what we use in all of our seasonal cocktails. It's a great spirit to use in seasonal cocktails because it has that whiskey, but for your guests that are like, man, I don't drink whiskey, like you can make a really solid cocktail with this. And then you can also use our original and make a solid old fashioned. So like we kind of have the best of both, but the Blue Peak is at 86 proof, so it's a little lower. At 86 proof, it's going to be aged 4 years in American white oak, finished in these giant foeders. Using the Solera method. I'll tell you all about that when we get in there and actually see the foeders. But very approachable whiskey, very flavorful, little caramel, vanilla notes in there. But feel free to sip on that, enjoy it. We'll do like a formal whiskey tasting later, but feel free to just sip on that, enjoy it. If you do decide like it's Tuesday at 4 o'clock and want to shoot it back, like I won't judge you, at least not like out loud, but go ahead, but it's not going to make your next whiskey come any faster, okay? So you've got about 25 minutes before the next one comes. So that's our Blue Peak. So what is Stranahan's? How did we get here, right? What's going on here? So Stranahan's all gets started. Our story starts back in 2004, okay? Stranahan's is the first legal first legal distillery in all of Colorado after Prohibition. So we kind of got the whole craft movement started. There's now like over 50 distilleries in Colorado, but we were the first ones to get it started back in 2004. And we got started by this man in all the pictures. You would think his last name would be Stranahan's, but you'd be wrong. Okay, his name is Jess Graber. So Jess Graber's our founder. Jess Graber had a bunch of talents, did a bunch of things. Really had a passion for making moonshine, really is what he did. Okay, he was a volunteer firefighter, had a ranch, like worked on the ranch, but his passion was making moonshine out of his still in his backyard. Okay, he made a bunch, but I bring up the fact that he was a volunteer firefighter because one day he gets a call to head to a barn fire. Hops in his truck, heads to the barn fire, right? Gets there, barn's on fire, and he starts getting his hoses out, getting ready to fight the fire, and all of a sudden he sees some guy run into the burning building who's not a firefighter, and he's like, that's not great. The same guy comes back out rolling a barrel on the ground, okay? Jess is like, okay, good, he got it out. No, same guy runs back into the building, okay? At this point, Jess has a decision to make, right? A, keep getting the hoses ready, or B, go rescue the barrels. I'm sure you can guess which one he chose. He runs in and gets the barrels, okay? So they get all the barrels out. They're sitting around a nice bonfire. Barn didn't make it, but they get all the barrels out and they get to talking. He gets to talking with this guy and he's like, man, I got to know, like, I got a pretty good idea what's in there, but what is in there? Why do we just run in there? Turns out there's a bunch of beer in the barrels, okay? He met George Stranahan that night, okay? George Stranahan is the owner of Flying Dog Brewery. I don't know if you've ever heard of Flying Dog Brewery. Some of you nodding your head, yep. So George owned the brewery and they were saving some of that initial beer that night, way back when. Jess's next logical step, you know, they get to drinking. I imagine they had more than one or two, because Jess, at the end of the night, he says, hey, can I take one of these barrels home? I want to run it through my still, make a moonshine out of it, and make a whiskey out of it maybe. I think you'd really like it. And again, I say they probably had more than one or two because George says yes. Gives him an entire barrel of beer. Okay, mind you, one barrel holds about 53 gallons of beer. It's a lot of beer when you're starting a new company. Okay? Jess brings it home, he distills it, turns it into a moonshine, brings it back to George and says, hey, I want you to try this. I made this out of your beer. George tries it, he really likes it. Jess is like, you know, I got another great idea, like we should make a distillery. George says, no, I'm not really into it. He says, I brew beer, that's my thing, like not really into the distilling thing. Jess says, well, what if I put your name on the label instead of mine? And George says, that's a great idea. And we open up doors, okay? So We opened doors in 2004. We used to be on Blake Street. If you guys are familiar with Denver, if you've seen Coors Field, like where the Rockies pretend to play baseball, okay? Yeah, you laugh because they're pretty, okay, anyway. Yeah. Okay, so, but, yes, but 3 blocks north of the stadium, that's where we used to be. So Flying Dog Brewery used to be right in Denver, 3 blocks north. The building next door was for sale. We bought it. We punched a hole in the wall. We put a T in the pipe, and we started pumping some of that wash into our distillery, where we started distilling it and aging it ourselves. Okay? 2005 comes, 2006 comes, and we're finally able to sell our first bottle of whiskey. Okay? So we didn't take any shortcuts. We didn't do any small barrel aging when we first started. We didn't do any of that. We used 53-gallon barrels from the very beginning, and all of our whiskey ever sold has always been at least 2 years old. Sold that first bottle in 2006. People loved it. It was going great. 2007 comes, 2008, 2009 comes, and we hit a major roadblock in our story. Does anybody know where Flying Dog is today? Anybody? Any guesses? Is it right next to what? It is not. It's not even in Denver anymore. Okay, it's out in Frederick, Maryland. So George decided he wanted to go move to the East Coast and moved out there, took the brewery with him. That tea in the pipe stopped producing any liquid for us. Okay? We had a decision to make, right? Either stay there or find a new place or not produce anymore. And thankfully for me and my job, we found a new place and got a bigger spot. So in 2009, we bought this place. This used to be known as Heavenly Days Brewery. I don't know if anyone heard. Yeah, that was kind of the problem. They didn't make it. So we came in, we bought the space. They left us the mash on the boil kettle and those first 3 fermenters you see. They left all that equipment for us, so we were able to come in. And ever since 2009, everything from grain all the way to bottle is all done by us right here at this location. Okay, so we no longer have them making our wash for us. We do it all ourselves. Fast forward to 2024, right? We've grown a little bit. We're a lot bigger now. We now have 11 fermenters. We have 5 stills now. We actually own this entire city block that you're standing on. So yeah, we're doing things. We're getting better. We're available in all 50 states now. There's some states that have really weird liquor laws that like we don't really mess with, but we're in like 46 of the 50 states, I believe. So don't quote me on that. Yeah, that's a little bit about Stranahan's. Any questions on that? Right? No, it's history. Nobody. Yeah. So, right, what do we make? What kind of whiskey do we make, right? Why do we call ourselves an American Single Malt? What is that? So Stranahan's is 100% American Single Malt. Everything we do is American Single Malt. Meaning, for those of you guys that don't know, whiskey is a very broad umbrella term. You guys all know that. There's Scotch, there's Irish whiskey, there's bourbon, there's everything, right? You guys all have heard whiskey. We're an American Single Malt whiskey. So America, right, that should be pretty obvious. We're made in America. Single means we're all done right here at this location, one single location. Malt means 100% malted barley. So the only ingredient, the only thing that goes into that mash tun is 100% malted barley. There's no corn, there's no rye, there's no nothing. And then whiskey obviously is that umbrella of made from grain, touches a barrel, has whiskey-like characteristics. So I'll pass that around. You guys can kind of check that out. But that's our barley. We use a majority pale malt. You'll also see some other shades and colors of barley in there. We have a caramel, a chocolate, and a coffee roast, and we put those in by hand. So those silos are filled with pale malt. Everything else we dump in the mill upstairs by hand. So that's how we kind of combined all that. Dang it. That was a waste. That was sad. Everything else. So that's that American Single Malt Whiskey. That's what we're making soon, hopefully very, very soon, to be recognized by the TTB. And we'll actually have a category on the menu that says American Single Malt. And we won't just be thrown in with the bourbons or the scotches or wherever people put us on the menu. So we're really excited about that. How do we make our whiskey? Okay, so it's different than other whiskeys. We're not going to grind that up to like a powder. A lot of your other whiskeys, they grind up all their grain. It's like a powder. They make like Crystal Light or whatever I call it. We don't do any of that. So we're gonna basically run it through a grist mill, which means we're just gonna crack open the shell. Okay, so I'll pass this around too, and you'll kind of see what it looked like before. That's not the actual ratio of grain. That just looks pretty in a jar. I know you were thinking, you're like, that's a lot of dark. No, that just looks pretty in a jar. But that in the bottle I'm passing around, that is what it looks like post grist mill. Okay, so we're just cracking it open. You got to think about making whiskey, or making our whiskey, kind of like making coffee, right? You crack, you want to grind up a coffee bean, or tea, right? So we're going to take that grist, we're going to run through a grist mill, then it travels up this really high-tech piece of equipment right here, which is just a PVC pipe held by some really janky chains, but it works. And eventually all that grist, all that runs into our mash tun, okay? Our mash tun, this is where we add water, right? Just like adding your coffee. You grind the coffee bean up, you add water, you let it sit, you let it soak. We do the same thing. We put our water in there, we recirculate it, it runs, it lauters for like 3 hours, and by the end of it, it's done. We have our, what we call distiller's wort. Okay, distiller's wort, yeah, W-O-R-T, it's a really weird word. But we have our distiller's wort, and that is essentially a barley tea, okay? We've essentially made barley tea at this point, okay? We have a filter on the bottom of this mash tun, so we're done with the grain at this point. We open that drawer, we take that yellow shovel over there, we scoop all that grain out into there, it gets augered into a truck bed outside where we give it away to local farmers. They come take it away for free. It's really good for the animals. We've gotten all the sugars and starch that we need. Animals love it. There's no alcohol. There's not like drunk cows running around Colorado or anything. But we give that away. Then we boil off that liquid, make it safe to drink. Any natural bacteria or yeast that might have formed, we want to kill it, make it safe to drink, so we boil it off. Then we send it into the whirlpool. If you ever made like a water bottle tornado, like a tornado in your water bottle, that's essentially what we're doing. And the reason is any grain that might have slipped through here gets sucked in the middle and we can extract it. Thank you. I'll just leave those right there for Jason. So that's what that whirlpool does. Then we send it into the fermenter. This is where we add yeast. And yeast is a living organism. Yeast gets in there, it starts swimming around, it starts eating all the starches that we pulled off the grain. As yeast eats, yeast has byproducts just like you and I. Yeast byproducts are way better than ours, I promise you that. Does anybody know what they are? There's 2 of them. CO2 and alcohol, right? CO2, we don't need it, okay? You've never opened a bottle of whiskey and like, that would be weird, okay? So we don't need that. So all of our CO2, you'll see as we walk by, you'll see a bunch of really fancy 5-gallon buckets full of water. All that's doing is that hose runs into that water, that creates an airtight seal, so nothing gross or nasty can get back up into our wash, okay? The alcohol, that's why we're all here, right? That's why we all have jobs that we really enjoy. And that we keep, obviously, okay? After about 5 to 7 days, depending on how active the yeast is, how hungry it is. Again, about 5 to 7 days, we'll get it up to about a 6 to 8% alcohol. Okay, so it's essentially, if you've ever had like a sour style beer, I'm sure you've all had a sour style beer. It kind of tastes like that. Imagine if you took that sour style beer, like left it on the counter for a day or two, it was flat, like room temperature. That's essentially what our wash would taste like, okay? Again, drink enough of it, it would get the job done, but not really what we're after, okay? 6 to 8% alcohol whiskey is really lame. So, any questions on that? Yeah.
Where do you guys malt the barley? Is it malted here or?
So we don't malt here. Nope, we get all our barley from the Rocky Mountain region. There's a giant malting facility in Golden. I'm sure you're probably familiar with what's made in Golden out of barley. So we get a lot of our malt from them.
Brewer's wort versus distiller's wort. Same thing.
Wort's same, yeast different. So we use a brewer's yeast still.
Oh, wow.
So to this day, we still use a brewer's yeast, which, if you know anything about distilling, that's kind of dumb. It's not as efficient. So like if we use a distiller's yeast, it'd be way more efficient. We'd get our alcohol content higher in this stage and we'd have less to do later down the line. But when we started with Flying Dog Brewery. We started taking their wash. And so everything we've done, we kept it the same. So even though we're making it in-house, we still use a brewer's yeast. We still cultivate all our own yeast. We still grow our yeast in-house, but we're still using that same strand of brewer's yeast because we like the flavor more. It is a little less efficient, but better flavor. So, and then another question was, do we do the same mash bill every time? And yes, every expression we sell, everything you can buy, everything you can taste, The mash bill is all the same. Everything is the same through a barrel for 4 years. A few caveats, right? Obviously, we have experiments, and obviously we're doing stuff all the time. So we have a few other mash bills aging, but they're not available yet. They're still like 3-4 years old. They're tasting pretty good though. So, right, what's going on behind me, right? This is where your brewery tour ends, and now we're on to the distillation part, okay? So these are our stills. They're called pot column stills. It's a really fancy name for a pot still with a column still sitting on top of it. Your pot stills are traditionally don't have that thing with the 4 windows. That's typically not on a pot still. It's typically like a cone into a line arm. Those are used for bourbons, scotches, Irish whiskeys, a lot of those things. Then you see that column. That's the thing with the 4 windows on it. I'm sure you guys have seen massive column stills with 20 windows high, right? Like continuous stills you've seen. Like we don't have that either. So we just kind of took like a mini column because we did want some of that efficiency and kind of put the two together. So that's what we've got going on. So we still get all the flavor of that pot still, but you still get some of that efficiency of the column still, okay? Now, if you don't know what distillation is or what distilling means, like if I could dumb it down to like one sentence, distillation is essentially get rid of the water. Like that's really what we're trying to do here, okay? So we heat that giant, we put all of our wash, that's 6 to 8% alcohol, we put all that wash in the pot, we heat it up to 180 degrees. Okay, why do we heat it up to 180 degrees? Anyone know? Yeah, right, alcohol evaporates lower than water, okay? At this elevation, water boils at about 202.5. Alcohol actually boils at like 173 at this elevation. We go up to 180. Okay, kind of find that middle ground. Reason we do that, alcohol boils. As things boil, it turns to steam. Steam rises, we can collect that. Okay? And then it hits the column. The idea of the column still is there's little bubble plates. I don't know if you've ever seen bubble plates, but there's little bubble plates in there. It's just a hole with a cone on top, essentially. Steam rises, hits that little cone, drops down the side, and then it repeats that process through each window. In theory, it's getting a little more refined each window until eventually it reaches that silver kind of line arm you see. Then it travels into that vertical condenser you see. That's that vertical column of copper. All that's just cold coils of water running through that copper condenser. Reason being is we want the steam to turn back into liquid at that point. So all that steam hits that cold coil of water, condenses, turns to liquid again. Liquid drops due to gravity. We're now able to collect it. Does that make sense? Okay? We collect all the alcohol. Unfortunately, we get a lot of water with the alcohol. Okay? You've boiled a pot of water at home, like you know even before the pot's boiling, you have steam all over the lid, right? Like we get a lot of water with our alcohol. Okay? But we are able to take it from about 6 to 8% alcohol all the way up to 80 proof in one distillation run. Okay? 80 proof, that's the minimum. We could put that liquid in a barrel, we could take it out, slap a label on it, we could call it a whiskey at this point. Okay? In our mind, 80 proof is kind of weak. So instead of only distilling it once, we go ahead and do it again. So that's when you see these smaller stills over here. Okay? These smaller stills, they do the exact same thing. It's a pot, it's a column, it's just the same thing on a smaller scale. Reason it's on a smaller scale is these things hold about 800 gallons. Okay, of that 800 gallons that we put in, we only get about 100, 150 gallons of that 80 proof spirit out. So we've gotten rid of a lot of water. Okay, but we'll distill it again. We'll do the same process over again. Okay, we'll cut it down even more. And what we finally end up with is our high wines, our hearts, our whatever you want to call this. You guys can kind of scoot down and like pass this yellow line. I'll let you break the rules. Just this yellow line, not this one. But alcohol rises, if you're not familiar with it, alcohol rises in 3 parts. Okay, we call it the heads, the hearts, and the tails. The heads of the alcohol, those are those lightest alcohol vapors. Okay, they're the alcohol vapors that rise first. Okay, they're actually the alcohol vapors that are coming off that still right now. Those very first alcohols are not good for us. Okay, I don't know if any of you have heard of methanol. Not great, okay? Early moonshiners, they didn't really know this, and now they have like missing teeth and really good haircuts, so I'll let you be the judge. So we cut all our heads out. Okay, we do put it in we put it in our spray bottles. So like all those spray bottles on the cart, that's heads. In the hand sanitizer machine, that's heads. So we try and reuse as much of those heads as we can. Then what rise next? Those alcohol vapors that are a little heavier, those rise next. Those are the hearts. Those are the high wines. That's what I have in this jar. I'll walk around and I'll let you smell this. I used to be able to just like pass this jar around and then I never got a full jar back. And so now I walk around and smell it, but I also really enjoy this part of the tour because I can tell who might have drank a little too much last night. So this is the hearts. The last alcohol vapors to rise, those are what we call tails. Okay? The tails of the alcohol are the heavier molecules. The heavier molecule, the harder it is for your body to break it down. Okay? So I don't know if you've ever had one of those nights where you just went to the store and bought that plastic bottle on the bottom shelf and you drank a lot of it and the next morning you woke up and you weren't feeling so hot. Okay? There's probably a lot of tails in that alcohol. Okay? It's safe for you to drink, but those molecules are heavier and it just makes it harder for your body to digest. So we put a very faint amount of tails in. The tails do have a decent amount of flavor. So we do put a little bit in to get some of that flavor. But for the most part, we're going to leave those out as well. Okay? What do you think the proof on that high wines was, those hearts? 90, 130. You're still low. Little high, 140. Okay? I think I heard it. 140. So that's about 70 to 75% pure alcohol. Okay, like at that point we're good. We could distill it even more, but legally we have to cut it back down to 125 proof just to put it in a barrel. So why distill it any higher? Okay. Again, another way we're kind of inefficient on purpose. We actually cut it all the way down to 110 proof. So we'll actually cut it all the way down to 110 proof before we put it in a barrel, which it's kind of inefficient because we're taking a bunch of water out and then we're adding water back in and we're using barrel space to age water. Okay? It's kind of inefficient, but again, it goes back to that flavor for us. Okay? We want that better flavor, so we're a little inefficient to get that better flavor. So that's why we go to 110 proof. All right, so what I've got next for us, this is our Stranahan's Original. Okay, this is one you've probably seen if you're familiar with Stranahan's. Again, kind of like I said, somebody asked, does it taste different now? Yes and no. The only reason I say yes is our original used to be a marriage of 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old barrels. Our original is now a marriage of 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-old barrels. Okay, so it's gonna be a little smoother, I don't know. I'll let you guys try for yourself before I say too much. We are gonna do like a 4-part whiskey tasting with this one, so I will ask that you don't slam it back right away. So all of our barrels, I will say, are a level 3 char. We get all our barrels from the Independent Stave Company in Lebanon, Missouri. And then what do you do with them when you're done? A lot of people ask. We sell them to a barrel broker, and then we work with a lot of breweries in town. We do a lot of trades. So we loan a lot of barrels out. We let breweries borrow them, and then all we ask in return is to get the barrels back. So if you notice, we have a Colorado Brewer's Cask in the store right now. That's part of our kind of loaning program, if you will. First part of the whiskey tasting, okay? First thing I want you to do is just smell the whiskey, okay? Smell the whiskey, look at the whiskey, become friends with the whiskey. Just don't try it yet. Man, I forgot how long it takes to pour for 30 people. I haven't done this in a while. Okay, so, right, first part of the tasting, right, is nosing our whiskey, right? See a lot of you just doing this, right? That's not good. Where are all your taste buds? In your mouth. You'd be surprised how many people say in your nose, okay? It amazes me every time. I'm like, not mine, but yeah. So we want to activate those taste buds in our mouth as well. So I'm actually going to ask you to kind of tilt your glass at like a 45-degree angle. You're going to kind of get your nose and your mouth in there, and then you're going to breathe in through your nose and your mouth at the same time. Okay, if you can't do that, just, it's fine. I told you I won't judge you outwardly. Out loud. Okay? What are we getting? What are we picking up on? Any taste? What? Banana. Okay. That's really weird. You're not the first person to say banana, and I never got banana until like somebody said it, and then I was like, man, the power of suggestion. Yes, yes. Anything else? What else? Grass, whiskey, yes. Vanilla. Okay. Green bell peppers. Yeah, I'm getting all, these are all great answers. Okay, now what I want you to do, okay, the second part of the tasting, we're just going to take a small sip. We're not actually trying to like taste the whiskey right now. We just want to get that old whiskey off our tongue, that lunch, maybe those beers you drank on the party bus, I don't know, okay, but I want it off your tongue. So I want you to take just a small sip, get that off your tongue. Okay. Now we're ready, okay? We've told our palates like, hey, buckle up, Buttercup. We got 94 proof whiskey coming down. Okay, we're ready to go. So now what I want you to do is take, I don't know, half to a third of what's left. Some of you are looking at me like, Wally, you sure about that? Yes, I'm sure about that. Okay, and I want you to do what we call the Rocky Mountain roll. So we're gonna kind of roll that whiskey over our tongue, under our tongue. We're gonna get our cheeks wet. We're gonna get like the roof of our mouth wet. We're gonna get underneath the tongue wet. We're not gonna like sit here and like gargle it and try and get the back of our throat wet, okay? That makes a mess in front of you that I gotta clean up later. So don't do that. And then yes, I want you to swallow it, okay? We're not like drinking wine here. I'm not giving you a spit cup like we drink our whiskey here, okay? So again, third to half of what's left, roll it around the mouth for like 3-4 seconds, and then go ahead and swallow that. Not the reaction I was hoping for.
Don't mind me.
I won't. Okay, what are we getting? What are we getting? Did we get any of that banana, that grass? Walnuts. Did you get any of the vanilla? Baking spices. Did we get the green bell pepper? Yeah. The spicy? Some of that, kind of that black pepper that kind of hangs out on the sides of your tongue. I get a little cinnamon. Okay. What? Orange? Yep. A porch.
Porridge, like.
Oh, porridge.
Porridge.
Porridge. I thought you said a porch. I was like, I've never ate my porch. Porridge, yes. Yes. Sorry.
Pork skin.
I was very thrown off for a second. Cool. So that's our original, right? 94 proof. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come by. I'm sure you guys have like little bar spoons of water and water droppers if you're serving scotch, right? Same thing. I'm going to come by and I'm going to put some water in your whiskey. Okay? If you're not sure why we do this, well, I tried. Okay, if you're not sure why we do this, it's to open up the whiskey. Okay, it's to really open up some of those flavors that might have been hiding. Okay, when you do this to like an 80 proof whiskey, you're just adding water. Okay, we bottle all the way at 94 proof. When you do this, when I put this in, hold it up to the light and you'll see this weird like swirling action happening inside your glass. Okay, you'll see almost like, it almost looks like an oil swirl, like that's those phenolic acids breaking up, okay? We're releasing new flavors that don't come through at the 80 proof, okay? And I'm only putting like a little bit of water in each one of your glasses, and you'll be amazed at like how much it opens up the whiskey and changes the flavor. But I don't want you to drink it yet. I kind of just want you to sit there, let it swirl, and we're just going to let that water kind of do its thing for a second.
I know.
There you go. So again, you should be able to see that swirling going on and see it happening, okay? Water question, again, just kind of let that sit there and I'll explain why we're going to let it sit there. Water question. So up to the stills or up to mashing in, we can use city water. Okay, we're going to distill it all off anyway. Everything off the still, we use El Dorado Canyon Springs water. Okay, if you're not familiar with El Dorado Canyon Springs water, and you're like, Wally, why are you saying the entire name, El Dorado Canyon Springs water? Because I want you to remember it. El Dorado Canyon Springs water, it's made right 35, 40 minutes from here. If you know where Boulder is, it's just the canyon just south of Boulder. I kid you not, this is true fact. In 2021, I've seen the certificate. There's a water competition in West Virginia. You guys are laughing like, yes. El Dorado Canyon Springs water was voted the #1 best tasting bottled water in the U.S. It was #2 in the world at that competition. Unfortunately, we lost to Fiji. But that competition, though, was also voted the #1 most boring competition in the world. But if you want to be a water sommelier, like it's a real thing. I've seen the certificate myself. So that's what we're doing. Now, why did I put it in your whiskey, right? Okay, I kind of told you to break up those phenolic acids, right? We bottle all our whiskey at 94 proof, okay? 94 proof is kind of high to bottle a whiskey at, right? So at 94 proof, the reason we do that is because we know sometimes it's a Tuesday and you're not sitting at Stranahan's on a tour drinking whiskey, enjoying yourself, right? Maybe it's Tuesday and it's about 5 o'clock. You're getting off. You got to go sit in rush hour. Right before you're about to get off at 5, the boss walks in your office. He says, hey, before you leave, I'm going to need those TPS reports, right? And thank you. One person got that joke. Dang. I know. You've seen Office Space, though. Who's seen Office Space? Okay, come on. Man. Thought that one was going to hit better. But, right, you got we call that a 94 proof day. Okay, we've got our 94 proof. Other times it's Friday, you don't have to go to work and you're sitting hanging out, you're at the barbecue, right? You want to put some ice in your glass, you want to let it cool off, but you don't want to water it down and ruin the flavor. So that's why we did that. That's why I've let it sit there. I've mimicked that ice cube melting, okay? I want you to do another Rocky Mountain roll now and tell me if you can taste, what kind of differences you taste. More citrus. More creamy. More oily. Yep, it changes the texture a little.
Like green apple.
Green apple. Chocolate, yeah. Grapefruit pith. That's a good one. Did anybody get more spice? You did, okay. Yeah, so that always like weird. I always find that fascinating. I get less spice personally, but I find it fascinating that some people get a little more spice in the beginning. But the best part is it still tastes like whiskey, right? It's not that like watery, soupy mix that you don't want to drink, right? Like it still tastes like whiskey. So it's amazing what a couple glasses of water, or a couple drops of water can do. Our barrels, right? I've talked a little bit about our barrels now for our whiskey in the barrel, right? Okay. So that whiskey, that barrel was filled back in 2013. It's sat there ever since. Well, I mean, it's been moved around, but it hasn't been emptied, it hasn't been touched, hasn't been uncorked. We haven't taken any whiskey out of that since 2013. Until today. No. Right? But you can see, right, that it's not full anymore. Okay? So what happened to it, right? I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it, right? The angels share, okay? The angels come down from heaven, they take their rent money and they head back. No. We lose, on average, about 6 to 8% a year in each barrel. Okay? That kind of goes down with time, but we'll say on average about 6%. Okay?
Actually filled all the way to the top?
Yes. No, that barrel was filled to the very, very top, to the brim. And we lose, like I said, about 6 to 8% a year. So that's how much loss happens in roughly 11 years. That barrel even loses less because it has glass on the sides versus wood is more porous. So an actual barrel would be even less than that right now.
Lots of concrete around it, so where did it aged? Has that barrel been in a concrete building or wood building?
That specific barrel has been in this room pretty much ever since. A lot of other questions we get about that is does the flavor change, right? Do things happen? Does it get darker? Like, all those things are true, right? The flavor is going to change over the course of the years. It's going to get darker, right? You notice that high wines was perfectly clear. The whiskey you're drinking is not. We don't add like food dye in here or like add flavoring or cinnamon sticks or like we don't do any of that, okay? It's all coming from the wood itself, okay? Our level 3 chars, American White Oak, independent stave companies where we get all our barrels.
You have to roll the barrel to keep it moist?
We do not. That would take, we don't have the money to just hire somebody to, no. What is cool though about our barrels, this is really cool. And unique to Colorado, right? Any tour you go on, they're going to tell you like, oh, our aging climate is the best. Like, we're just playing into the positives, right? Like, I'll be real with you guys. We've got some negatives of aging in Colorado, okay? It's a very dry climate in Colorado if you guys haven't been here before. You're going to need some lotion tonight. Like, it's dry here, okay? And the barrel wants to match that dry climate. Okay, it wants to be dry. It's dry out, it's dry around it, it wants to be dry inside. So we actually are, that's a benefit to us because we're losing more water. Okay, that barrel wants to dry out, so we lose more water and we retain more alcohol. I won't lie, there's some negatives. The negatives of it, we lose 8% every year, 6% every year. Okay, you go to a more humid climate, closer to the sea, they're going to lose 2%, 3% a year. Okay, they lose way less volume. However, it's more humid there. The water wants to stay in that barrel. It wants to match that climate. So they're actually losing more alcohol. So in places like Scotland, Kentucky, right, a lot of their proofs go down in a barrel. We'll enter at 110. I've seen barrels get as high as like 124 proof, okay, in like 8 years. So our proof goes way up. So we're losing more volume, but again, to cut it to 94 proof, our proof is so high that we can afford to add a little extra water in there to get it back down to 94 proof. So right, there's pros and cons of everywhere you can age a barrel. Our pro is our alcohol content goes way up. Our con is we lose more volume. Okay. All right, I got more whiskey for you guys.
How do you decide which whiskey goes into that?
I appreciate that excitement over there. How do we decide which whiskey goes in there? All of our 4 and 5-year-old barrels only. There's no real science behind. We'll take some from each batch we do. So like, say we produce, I don't know, generally we'll produce about 1.5 barrels from one still. So say we make, I don't know, say we make 40 barrels in a week. We'll probably take 10 of them and put them in there. The rest we'll leave to age. So we kind of take them from each, we kind of make sure we're taking a little bit of each one from each different rack house. So kind of that way. Does that make sense? So what I've got now is our Diamond Peak. Okay, our Diamond Peak. This is a rotating series. So if you've had Diamond Peak in the past, it's probably not this one. This one was just released like last month. Okay, so this is our Diamond Peak batch number 3. It's a Caribbean rum cask finish. So this one's going to be a little sweeter. It's going to have some of those rum notes. Okay, you changed your mind. I appreciate it.
I didn't do anything then.
So our first batch, somebody already asked about our first batch of Diamond Peak. Somebody's had some Stranahans before. Our first batch was made, finished in used Bushmills Irish whiskey casks. Okay, our second batch, if you're able to find it, I suggest you try and find it. If anybody's had our second batch, it's our extra añejo tequila cask finish. Okay, I know it's as good as it sounds. We got, if you guys are familiar, I'm sure you've all heard of Reserva de la Familia Extra Añejo Tequila. We are lucky enough that we got some of the barrels out of Cuervo's private cellar. We aged our whiskey in there for like finished, I should say. We didn't age. We finished our whiskey in there for like an additional 4 years. It was delicious. This one is equally as delicious, a little sweeter. Same kind of style of aging. It was like 4 years in American white oak, and then another 4 years in Caribbean rum casks that we got from Barbados. They don't tell us. When you buy a barrel, they don't tell you which distillery it came from. All I know is it came from Barbados.
Well, then you probably got 2 options. So,
So yeah, I don't know which one it was though.
Do you have a snowflake as well?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I saw Sam counting, so I'm not saying anything. I saw him counting. I don't know what he was counting for, but it could be.
I sent a picture to our local rep. She's like, ask about the snowflake.
I'll tell you about it. Not yet. So again, this is our Caribbean. Oh, sorry, man.
You're okay. I drank it.
Or you're just getting a third one. That's fine. So again, our Caribbean rum cask. Diamond Peak, like I said, it's a rotating series. So it's different cask finish whiskeys that are available nationwide. That's the cool thing about Diamond Peak. A lot of the cool things we do here at the distillery don't make it to the national market. So Diamond Peak was our way of like, let's make sure we get cool stuff out into the national market. So Diamond Peak is this rotating, every year it'll change into a cask finish whiskey. Huh?
what time of year?
It's generally about March to May, somewhere in that kind of late spring is generally when the new one comes out. So again, feel free to drink that one, taste that one on your own. You guys are like smart whiskey drinkers now. If you want water, I have some. I don't think it needs it. This one's cut down to 90 proof, but that Caribbean rum, that sweetness, good stuff in there. Somebody asked me about that still. That still's super cool. That's just his original still. So that's the still he was using up in Woody Creek to distill his whiskey. And super cool that we have it now. You'll notice there's some dents in it. That's a really fun story. This is a true story. His still went missing one night. Couldn't find it. He took it in the canoe. Yes. Dang, that's good. But this is an equally good story, and it's true though. But that's a good one. He did find it by a small stream. He found it about 200 yards down the hill, and it had been there. You can't see them anymore; they faded, but there were claw marks in it. It had been attacked by a bear and pushed down the hill. So a bear smelled like how sweet the high wines was coming off it. A bear tried to get in it and get the moonshine, and he found it like 200 yards down the hill. So, and then he put it in a canoe to get it home.
They stole it full?
Huh?
They stole the still full?
No, it was empty at that point, but yeah, he had already ran it for the night. Cool, we're gonna go head into the bottling. So, got a few more questions kind of on the walk over about the rack houses and different things we've got going on. Our climate here. For those of you guys that don't know, like Denver is not this like super snowy, super cold city. The mountains are, don't get me wrong, but like in Denver, we have pretty mild winters. It's kind of a great place. But that drastic climate change, like you can go golfing in a pair of shorts in Denver in February. It's crazy. And then, so those drastic temperature changes really help us. So as much as we try to climate control, we do actually enjoy some of that climate change aspect, and that's why we don't super climate control them, is because as that wood expands and contracts with the different temperatures, the more expansion and contraction of the wood we get, the more interaction the whiskey gets with that wood, the more flavor we can pull out of the wood. So there's a lot of benefit to it as well. Yeah. Bottling, right? This is our bottling hallway, right? The tin cup. You guys have all seen it. What is going on? There's vodka there. What is going on here? Okay, tin cup. I'll address that first. Jess Graber, he was our founder, right? He was working here. He lives in Woody Creek, still lives there today. Still lived in Woody Creek when he was working in Denver. If you guys don't know where Woody Creek is, it's near Aspen. It's like a 3.5 hour drive from here. He would literally drive down here Monday morning, work all week, and then drive back to Woody Creek on Friday to go be with his family and his girls. And he did that for, I think, until 2011. Okay, so he did that for almost 7-8 years. He was getting, as Stranahan's got bigger, he was getting offers to buy the company. He said no, he said no, he said no. Finally, Proximo came in. They offered nationwide distribution and an early retirement, and he said, you know what, I think it's time. So sold in 2011. He got tired. He got impatient, I think. I think he's just an antsy guy. I've met him plenty of times. He's a great guy, and he likes to work. And he missed it. He was a moonshiner. He made this great Stranahan's brand and distillery, and he missed it. He went back to Proximo and said, hey, I sold you guys this great whiskey. Can I try and make a bourbon and you guys pay for it? And they said yes. So Tin Cup is kind of his retirement project, if you will. He went to Indiana. The reason he went to Indiana, there's a heck of a lot more corn in Indiana than there is in Colorado. Developed Tin Cup. Each bottle of Tin Cup, it contains 5% American Single Malt Whiskey. Now that you know it's bottled right here, I'm sure you can guess which American Single Malt Whiskey that is. And then we bottle it here for them. They put the elevation on the box and do commercials in the mountains, and it's made in Indiana, but sure. We bottle it here for them. So that's Tin Cup. The vodka, that really shouldn't be out, but long story short, you guys are bartenders. You guys know if all you had was whiskey to use in your bar, it'd be kind of tough. That's our rules here. Due to our manufacturing license in Colorado, the only alcohol we can serve in the bar has to be made here, with the exception of Angostura bitters and Peychaud bitters and Fee Brothers, and with the exception of very small things, every alcohol we serve out in our distillery has to be made here. So in order to kind of do that, we make some liqueurs in-house with our neutral grain spirit. We have made a vodka, we've made a coffee liqueur, we've made a rum.
Same mash bill.
No, definitely different mash bills. But in order to have some more stuff to play with and complement our whiskey, don't get me wrong, the whiskey is still the focus of every cocktail we have in the bar. But again, we play with some coffee liqueurs, and we do like a whiskey espresso martini, and we do like an up at night cocktail, and some different things. So some different liqueurs we can play with, and that's where our mixologists get to have a bunch of fun, is because we just give them neutral grain high wines at 140 proof and say, go wild, like have fun, like make some cool stuff. So that's pretty fun that we get to do that. But that's why you see the vodka here. That is we have to distill it here, but we didn't want to put like Stranahan's vodka because that would kind of throw off the brand messaging. And so Hangar One was a brand that Proximo already had, and so we just kind of were like, we'll just take that one.
I don't know if you said this, but like, do you actually get to commercialize those liqueurs?
We do not. Nope, we do not. That's just for use in our bar. Same with our barrel-aged bitters. We make our own bitters for like our old fashions in-house with different herbals, and we use the char from the barrel, and so that all we use here. We don't sell any of those.
We all want those.
Buy them as souvenirs.
You got me
Yeah.
excited and then you disappointed me.
Souvenir, I don't know. They're probably around somewhere. Cool. Well, that's bottling. Oh, bottling Stranahan's. I didn't even talk about that. Bottling Stranahan's happens right here in this corner. The way less fancy equipment. We bottle Stranahan's by hand still. Okay. So I couldn't answer that. I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know. But 90% of Stranahan's is bottled by hand. We'll use this occasionally, like in like very high need times. But for the most part, we bottle all Stranahan's by hand. And the reason we do that is when Jess first started the company, he had been making whiskey for 2 years without bringing in any income. Okay, unlike other distilleries, we never made a vodka or a gin to start just to get something on the shelf. We never used small barrels to get started. We didn't really take any shortcuts to get started. We used 53-gallon barrels, 2-year minimum aging from the very start. So when it came time to bottle that first batch of Stranahan's 2 years later, Jess had paid employees. He had bought grain. He had bought equipment. He had spent a boatload of money in 2 years. Came time to bottle. He's like, I'm not buying bottling equipment. Like, I don't have money. Told his family and his friends, like, hey, like told his employees, his family, his friends, like, hey, get your family, get your friends, bring them to the distillery. We're going to do a big bottling party. And he bought them all beer while they were working. He bought them all pizza for lunch. They ran out of beer. They said, Jess, can we drink the whiskey? He said, sure. And most of the whiskey made it in a bottle. Fast forward to batch number 2 came. He still had no money. Everybody that came had such a good time that they like told their family and friends about it. And they all came. And batch 2 came, beer, pizza, whiskey. Most of it made it in the bottle. Okay, fast forward 285 batches later. You can sign up online. Anybody can sign up online. It's a complete lottery system. I will say there are like 28,000 people on the waiting list right now. And twice a month, we send people emails, say you've been selected, pick your shift, come on down. We make you work for 4 hours. You actually only bottle for like 3 hours, and you still get pizza for lunch. You still get to drink whiskey on the job. We stopped buying beer because we're no longer right next to Flying Dog Brewery. But you still get beer and pizza while you're whiskey and pizza while you're working. And as a souvenir, we say, hey, you bottled this today, take it home with you. So we give you a bottle that you bottled here at the distillery to take home with you. So, yeah.
What's the story on the metal?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So if you guys follow me in here, we'll kind of talk about the bottles. So a lot of other questions as we were coming in here. Somebody asked about the caps on the bottle. Somebody asked about the sherry, cigars, and this bottle. Okay, a lot of things to cover. Cigars, they're great. Enjoy them. I recommend our sherry whiskey for that. Our sherry whiskey is finished in those, I don't know if you saw that really big, tall looking old barrel that was standing up vertically. That was a sherry Olorosa butt that we got from Spain. somebody Spanish in here or something? Just really like Spain. We now use mostly sherry PX barrels. We've kind of switched over, and man, just love sherry back there. I like the energy. But that's a really good one. We again, similar style, same mash bill, finish and use sherry, Olorosa, and PX, but mostly PX now. And it's just got like a nice desserty, just nice with a cigar. Somebody asked about the metal caps. Okay, the metal caps, these are fun too. You'll see the metal caps on all of our bottles but the Blue Peak. Reason we do that, reason we put those on there is Jess was back when he was, he is like a cowboy. He has a ranch, he was riding around, he was making moonshine for his friends. He didn't like have a cork tree in his backyard. And so if you didn't know this, old cowboys, they used to just take tin. The cow women probably figured this out, not the cowboys. But if you heat up tin, you can literally put it on a bottle and like mold it over the lid of the cap. So that's what he would do, and you pop it off, and then you'd have a cup to drink out of. So as an ode to the old cowboy culture, we put a cup on. We don't mold it on anymore. Now it just screws on so that you can easily get it off. It used to be like a pressure cap, and then we got a lot of phone calls saying, I can't get this cup off. Maybe some of you made those phone calls. So we put threads on it now, and it's way easier to get off. It also conveniently makes the bottle just tall enough that it doesn't really fit on any shelf but the top shelf. So, right where it belongs, you know? So that's that. The labels are also really fun. So again, when we only had OG, we would bottle OG up, and we would we have these blank spaces. You'll see it on the bottles in the store. If you buy it in the market or at a liquor store, it won't have this anymore. But still at the store, still here, we keep the tradition alive here. We would used to let the volunteers write whatever comments they wanted. You're laughing. When it was family and friends, it was fine. Then we kind of started bringing strangers in to volunteer bottle, and we started getting calls from liquor stores, and we're like, hey, this bottle has a really weird anatomical drawing on it. Like, I don't think we can. So we had to cut that off. Now, they do. You're right. With that said, we still, the people that work here, the distillers, some of us in the office, some of the other tour guides, we still let them write handwritten comments. Some of the funny ones still sneak through. This one says, welcome to Earth. I'm not really sure why it says that. This one says, party on. Believe in love. Everyone secretly loves Creed. Like, I don't. That's ridiculous. Who wrote that, Devin? That's funny. Devin wrote all. I have never seen that one. That was funny. One of my favorite one. It makes sense if you're a whiskey drinker, but one of my favorite one is a true story. It said, "All good stories start with 3 fingers." That one really made me laugh. There was another one that said, text your or call your mom. I was like, yeah, I should. There's some pretty funny ones that sneak through. Like that's fun. Everybody loves. That's funny. So even today, we still write those comments and do that. But the last whiskey, that was the last question I got, is what is this whiskey now? You got another whiskey for me? I do. This is our Colorado Brewer's Cask. Okay. So remember I was telling you how we worked with some breweries on a loaning program. So this particular bottle, we worked with Bandit Oak Brewing, River North Brewery, and I believe Great Divide was the last brewery we worked with on this one. And they all made beer, aged their beer in our barrels, gave the barrels back to us, where we put whiskey in them, and aged our whiskey, or finished our whiskey in those beer barrels. So that one's pretty fun. This is a distillery exclusive. This one is only available here at the distillery. That was a good try. You almost got me. But they were mostly stouts and porters.
Oh, no, I got one.
Okay, I was going to top you off.
No, I won't stop you.
Okay.
I won't stop you from doing that. I just didn't want to get some under false pretense.
Oh, no, you're good. So some of the other whiskeys we have in the store that you'll see, we've got an experimental lineup. The experimental lineup is exactly what it sounds like. Justin, he's our head blender. So Justin Aiden, he gets to work on projects and work on different experiments, and most of them are cask finishing experiments. We have done some front end experiments. We've done some different experiments with char levels.
My taste buds are
So we've done, right now we have a honey in your tea barrel, which is we have you'll notice we have consumables out there. We have a honey that was aged in whiskey barrels, and same with the breweries. They gave us the barrel back after they aged their honey. And then we did a tea exchange as well with Deshamba Tea House in Boulder. They aged black tea in our barrels, and then sure.
What are we calling this?
And so that one's really cool. We took that honey barrel in that tea barrel and married them together, because who doesn't like putting honey in their tea? And the whiskey came out just delicious. And then we've also got some other wine finishes out there. Our previous distillery exclusive before the brewer's cask was a red wine cask finish. So that's out there as well. We have a single barrel. I think our single barrel right now is like 7 years old and 119 proof. So that'll get the job done pretty quick. Somebody asked about our snowflake. I'll tell you about it. Our snowflake is, if you've ever seen online, like the first Saturday of December, we release a bottle called Snowflake. It's the first Saturday of December every year. It's Justin's year-long project. So it's his project for all year, and he's master blending and finding all the barrels he likes. So last year, the main barrels he used was a Mezcal finished whiskey and an Isla peated Scotch finished whiskey. So we got quarter casks from Isla. I'm sure you can guess which distillery that one came from. Starts with an L, rhymes with Lefroy. And we got some of those barrels, and really just smoky, meaty whiskey. It was delicious. He balanced it out with some of that rum finish that you guys tried. But just really, really good whiskey. And so that only comes out one time a year. It sells out within like 4 hours. It sells out. It's only sold right out that front door. We have people camping in our parking lot for days. We throw a giant party for them the night before and say thanks for standing in line. We'll throw a party for you. And super cool whiskey that comes out once a year. But again, it sells out within like 3 hours.
How long have you been releasing that?
We've been releasing that since 2009, I think was the first batch. We did 2 releases a year for like the first 4 or 5 years. And then we kind of replaced that with, we do a giant party called Cask Thief every summer this year, or every late spring. So it just happened on May 18th. And that's where we open up all the doors in the distillery. You buy a ticket, and there's 7 different cask finished whiskeys that are just kind of scattered throughout the building. And we have our tour guides manning it, and you get an ounce pour out of each different cask and get to try 7 different cask strength finished whiskeys. Super fun party. We got bands, DJs, like food is part of your ticket. Like, so we do that now in the spring, and then the winter is Snowflake. So we only do 1 Snowflake a year now.
You guys do anything special for number 10? Like 2019, do you guys anything special?
Oh yeah, well, so 10 wasn't 2019 because again we were doing 2 batches for a while. So yeah, our 20th anniversary though is coming up, and we're planning. Justin's working on something really special for a really special high proof limited edition whiskey. He's working on something really special for the 20th anniversary of Stranahan's.
What is that selling for?
Don't know.
Like the previous one that you have.
Oh, the previous Snowflakes? Oh, so they used to be $99.99, and now I think they're up to $129.99.
One per person,
2 per person. 2 per person. Yep.
one to drink and one to save.
Well, exactly. Or unfortunately, like 1 to put on Craigslist and 1 to drink. And so yeah, you can get Snowflake for more than $129, but not for the Snowflake. No, the staff generally we do that as a staff team activity. That's a good question. Any other questions you guys got for me?
Sorry, I missed it. What was this one aged in?
So this is the Colorado Brewers Cask. So this is the different breweries we work with. Aged their beer in there. We got it back. Finished a different whiskey off for different amounts of time to whatever Justin liked, and then released it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for coming. No problem, no problem. You'll also, these glasses are also really fun. They're like drunk resistant. Like you can hit them and they'll just like, they'll weeble and they'll wobble, but they'll just keep popping back up. They're not drunk proof, like they do fall off of things and shatter. So I will warn you on that, but you can keep them. They're yours. They're yours. You don't, I know you were already thinking about like, I'm gonna put this in my purse. Like, you don't even gotta sneak it in the purse. We'll give it to you.
Thank you.
We used to like try and get them back, and then we realized enough people did just put them in their purse, and we're like, it's not worth it. So.
I was your strategy.
No, you guys have been great. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Are you done?
I'm done.